This is a project that no one else is talking about. I've gone into YouTube and I've searched for it, and the surprising thing is that it's not out there yet in the public. It's a really cool project, and I'm going to tell you why. It hasn't been launched yet, and it's probably worth getting into. At the end, I'm going to show you two ways in which you can get into it, because you really don't want to get in during the IDO phase, and I'm also going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you three things that I love about it, and I'm also going to tell you what could kill it. In order to understand why AltLayer is really cool, we need to first understand the blockchain space and the direction where it's heading. So a lot of people think that the best projects that are going to happen in blockchain have already been out there. They think that Ethereum and Bitcoin were the big ones, maybe Solana, but then they kind of think that the period of the, shall we call it 100x or big gains tokens is kind of over. But I think it's kind of just starting, and I'm going to tell you why. So in order to understand where the blockchain space is going, we've got to look and compare it to the internet era. We need to go back to the 70s and the 80s and to see how the internet developed and what kind of companies were there and how big they were. And we want to see how that trend happened, and then we can link it to the blockchain space. All right, so let's get started. Back in the 70s, when the internet was starting, the initial companies that were big and were battling it out there were the companies that are actually building the hardware, the wires, pretty much to get the internet from the servers to you. It was companies that were building servers and microchips and quite literally the cables. So telecom companies were vying for competition. Companies like Cisco won out, and now they're big and they're multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, once the cables were laid out for the internet, what happened next? Next, it was the protocol wars. Protocols like IP. What's your IP address? IP stands for Internet Protocol. When you're typing HTTP, you're using Hypertext Transfer Protocol. These wars happened for, you could almost say, decades, and eventually a couple of protocols won. I'm speaking to you right now through the protocol that won for sending video. And so this is where we are right now in the blockchain space, where we've gotten the hardware correct and we're in the protocol wars right now. And that's why you've got Ethereum battling out with Solana and a whole bunch of other protocols. But guess what? Once the protocols were over during the internet era, everything changed again, and it became about apps that were facing users. You guys probably remember MySpace and Dig, and Google started out with Orkut as well, and they tried Google Circles and Twitter and Facebook and TikTok, and now we've got apps that are facing the user, and that's where all the money is at, right? But check this out. We're only in the protocol phase. In the blockchain space, the protocols are getting faster and better to the point that now dApps can start competing. We still haven't seen any dApp or user-facing app that's big. It's still really small and tiny, because you could point out billion-dollar protocols on the blockchain right now. So Ethereum and Bitcoin are worth billions of dollars, but you cannot find a single app that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Not really. You don't really have any apps on the blockchain that are the likes of Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and the like. So there is such a big space. In fact, Coinbase thinks that it's going to take 5 years for us to get to 1 billion users. I think it's probably going to take a little bit longer. So long story short, everything is just starting in the blockchain. And once it starts facing the user, that's when things are going to get crazy. And that's where the real value of the blockchain is going to come out. And that's why AltLayer is really smart in what they're doing. So what are they doing? Here's the deal. Everybody is fighting for developers. And so Ethereum started out, and then after that we've got our layer 2s and we've got layer 3s. But what they don't realize is that for a developers who want to build apps that face users, they face the problem of one building an app and giving it amazing UX and everything. But then the other problem that they also face is speed and selecting the layer 2 or the layer 3 that they want to use. They've got to go there and they've got to set up everything. They've got to find their own nodes and convince all of these nodes to come together and essentially run the dApp on top of those, on top of the layer 2 that they pick. That's hard as hell. Now, what AltLayer is it's a Rollup-as-a-Service. And what does that mean? It means that as a developer, all you have to do is pretty much go to an interface and say, listen, I've got this app that I'm building. It's going to be amazing. And I want a really quick roll up. I want it either on Arbitrum or I want it on Solana or something like that. And you click a button. 5 minutes later, you've got your own mini blockchain set up, running automatically. You don't have to convince anybody to stake anything for you. And then you can just run your app on top of it like that. And this is why this is amazing, because we're entering a phase where, like I said, now dApps are starting to come up, and the winning protocol is one that's going to make it super easy to build a dApp, so that it's not even anything you have to think of. You just build your dApp, you create your token, and boom, like you have it running on Optimism or ZK Sync or Polygon without thinking too much. Literally click a button. These are the three things that I love about it. The first thing is that it's multi-chain, meaning that you can put it on Optimism, ZK Sync, you can put it on Polygon, you can put it anywhere you want. The second thing is kind of cool in that this is really hard to do as a developer, is that once you set up your rollup, your app might be really young and you might not have too many users. So you might not want to spend so many resources on your rollup. You might not want to have as many nodes as if you had 1,000 users. On Saturdays, let's say, you might have a lot of users, but then on Tuesdays, you don't have a lot of users. So as an app developer, what you want is, in the Web2 space, you actually use something called elastic load balancing. That means that the server that your app is using can either grow or shrink based on usage, and that way you can save money. Now, this is kind of crazy because on AltLayer, you can actually do the same thing and load balance with your layer 2. That means that when you've got a lot of users, your layer 2 can grow. When you don't have a lot of users, it can shrink. It can even go to 0 and then expand again once you get your user. And the cool thing is that the security is shared. You don't have to worry about your nodes. Everything is just managed for you totally. Those are the three things that I really love about it. In a minute, I'm going to cover the one risk it faces. But first, let's look at the investors, the team behind it. This is kind of crazy as well. A lot of heavy hitters, and that's always a good sign because they've also done their homework. Three of the people that I really like in this are, first of them is a former Coinbase CTO, so that's a lot of good connections there. The second one is Gavin Wood, former founder of Ethereum and also founder of Polkadot. That's pretty amazing. And then Circle, co-founder as well. So there's a lot of good heavy hitters here as well. The people who are going to use this are, I think it's really varied. You could get games using it, decentralized exchanges, all kinds of dApps. I mean, if you wanted to, you could spin up your dApp really quickly like that and just start using it in a couple of minutes, and it's super cheap. So that's really exciting. This is something that other projects need to adopt, in that they don't want to just launch a service and say, oh, there we go, and it's got a token. What AltLayer have done is really amazing because they've really thought about the developers, because if you can attract the developers, I think that is your winning play. And this is what these guys have done differently, in that they've said, hey, we're going to create a Rollup-as-a-Service, something that is really easy to set up. It is a protocol, but from the developer's point of view, it's just like a dashboard where they go and they set up their blockchain. The one thing that could, I think, topple this project is competition. I think what they really need to do is that they need to get their service out, launch, and used by developers as quickly as possible. And if they can kind of build that space where they are the go-to Rollup-as-a-Service, then I think they can win. The same way, if you think of a lending protocol, Aave, right? They were the first. They kind of grew that space really quickly so that everybody who wants to get a loan, they go to Aave before they go to anybody else. The one thing that is a risk for AltLayer is another service coming and copying and crashing, right? So that's one risk that they face. But outside of that, this is a really cool project. And so I think it's really worth looking into. And the good thing is that they haven't launched yet. I think what's really good is that it's really important to find these services super early so that we can watch them and then we can get into them in the right way. At first, I said at the start of this video, I'm going to give you 2 ways, but I'll actually give you, I think, 3 ways that we can get into it. Now, a lot of people get in during the IDO, but in my opinion, I think the IDO is usually the worst case. By the time you're getting into the IDO, you need to remember that there have been other investment rounds that have got into this project, all the way from almost 0 price of the token to a little bit more. And by the time you're getting to the IDO phase, let's face it, guys, like there's people who get excited. Sometimes it's launched on Binance and the price shoots up like that. But guess what happens? A couple of days later, after you get into these IDOs, what happens? The people who got in months before you do dump some of their tokens at that point and the price goes down. And I want to give you some homework. Actually, go find any token that actually launched an IDO and kept going up. What you're going to find is that it did go up for a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks, and then it crashes. Boom. So there's a lesson for you. It's counterintuitive, but you never really want to get in during the IDO. There's 2 ways to get in, and then I'm going to give you a bonus one. The first way is through airdrops, and if you want to know how to get into AltLayer's airdrop, let me know in the comments. Obviously subscribe, let me know, and I can do a video on how to get into the airdrop. That's kind of nice. The problem with the airdrop is that it's kind of hard to control how many tokens you're going to pick up, but this is the best way because it also involves you getting to the research and like figuring out how the project works. So the first way is the airdrop, and that's one of the coolest ways to get into projects. The second way is honestly just wait past the IDO. Let the people who are super eager jump in and buy the tokens, and then wait for the investors to dump and give it a couple of weeks. You're even free to give it a month. It's totally safe. And start to pick up those tokens before the bull run, and then you're good. Now, this is the third thing that a lot of people don't really know is that there's the IDO, right? And then there's the airdrop, which kind of happens around there, and then you can pick it up here. But remember, there's also investors who got in here in the pre-sale level. Now, not a lot of people know how to get into pre-sales, but there's a couple of ways depending on how much liquidity you have. I can cover that as well in a video if you want to know how to get into pre-sales, because there's different ways depending on the kind of investor you are. But then there's ways as well, and I think that's a video in itself. So let me know in the comments as well if you're interested in that. But there you have it, guys. We've talked about AltLayer. We've talked about the 3 things that are amazing about it. And we've also talked about the thing that is quite a big risk, which is other projects coming in and taking over. And we've talked about how it can overcome that risk. And so there you have it, guys. AltLayer is an amazing project, worth getting into. It's a Rollup-as-a-Service, and we didn't really cover so much about the technology itself, but if you really want to know about the technology as well, just give me a comment and I'll give you all the information that you need. And that covers it for today's show. So yeah, make sure you give me a like and subscribe and spread the word, and stay curious, and I'll talk to you guys soon.